Hi everyone, it's Chris. Welcome to my dollhouse, and today I'm here sharing Annabelle's story. Annabelle is one of my forgotten souls, and she is a co-hostess of my haunted dollhouse readings, which will be on my other channel, but I'm showing you the doll on this channel. So if you want to head over onto that channel to see those readings when I start them, that's where they'll be. I'll leave a link for that. But this is Annabelle. She is our generation doll that I have modified to suit my readings, to suit the doll. She's a forgotten soul, Annabelle, and she's a bride doll, of course. So I've dressed her as a bride doll. I got all my doll clothes, most of them from AliExpress. So I bought the dress from there and the little veil, but the necklace I made up myself to suit this doll. So this is Annabelle, and she has a story. It's a very, very long story, so if you want to listen to it, please keep listening, but if you don't want to, you can leave now and say goodbye to Annabelle until you see her on my readings. She's a dual hostess with Lilith, which I've introduced to you before, but this is Annabelle. And she's my forgotten soul, so yeah, but she'll be on my other channel. So I'm going to tell you her story now. If you want to listen to it, it's very long, but otherwise you don't have to, of course. So let's have a start. It's my own story. I made it up myself. So if anyone questions that, it is my own story. Copyright me. So let's have a look and tell you the story. Forgotten Souls. This is Annabelle's story. Richard was swamped with grief. Annabelle was dead, and it was all his fault. He didn't know how to live without her. He had fallen in love with her the moment she popped her head round the door to his office. Her first day on the job as his new secretary. She was so young, he ancient in comparison. He had just been through an ugly divorce and vowed never to fall in love again. But there she was. How could he not have fallen for her, and heavily? Theirs was a fairy tale romance, and it struck him as peculiar at times that Annabelle could be so smitten with him, but she was, and he showered her with gifts with all the love he had. It wasn't always champagne and roses, though. Fiona, his ex-wife, made trouble for them the moment she discovered their tryst and vowed to end it. She was a very vindictive woman, and if she couldn't have Richard, no one could, and especially not someone as young and as sweet as Annabelle. It didn't matter that Fiona didn't love Richard. She just wasn't willing to see him happy. So, as Annabelle's feelings for Richard deepened, she became the target of Fiona's jealousy. Gossip amongst the staff was directed at her, and extra work would end up on her desk just before the end of a shift that needed filing. But Annabelle just knuckled under and completed what was assigned to her. She wasn't the sort to complain. Richard noticed the change in the office staff and the extra workload Annabelle was under, and supported her as much as he could without showing favouritism, but Annabelle assured him that she was fine. But she hid the nasty notes that were left on her desk from him. They were just too disturbing for him to see, and in spite of all that was happening, she and Richard continued their relationship. So blissfully in love with each other were they. For Annabelle, the most romantic and memorable moment spent with Richard was when he took her on a midnight walk along the beach, and under the brightest, biggest full moon she had ever seen, proposed on bended knee. The wedding date was set 3 months hence on the night of June's full moon. Annabelle continued with her work, still under pressure from the office staff and their nasty notes, and extra workload. She had no idea that Richard's ex-wife Fiona was behind it all. In fact, Richard never spoke of his past, and Annabelle never questioned him. The weeks flew by as Annabelle juggled work and wedding preparations. Her excitement was almost palatable at times when she and Richard were together, happy with each other's company and blissfully in love, and very unaware of how Fiona's rage was increasing. On her wedding day, Annabelle answered her door to the florist. She had ordered her bouquet from the tiniest, most unique little florist shop on Main Street, and they promised to deliver bright and early that morning, so her flowers would be as fresh as possible. She had ordered daisies and baby's breath, but her eyes widened in surprise, and her breath caught in her throat when she saw the bouquet the man delivery was holding. Chrysanthemums. Annabelle had taken a lot of time looking into the meaning of flowers when choosing her bouquet, so she knew that chrysanthemums meant a flower which means an end of life, and as such, if not placed in graves, was used in funeral wreaths. The delivery man noticed the expression on Annabelle's face and asked, "Is something wrong?" "I did not order these. Please take them away." Then Annabelle closed the door. Trembling, she thought about what to do. Obviously, the florist had sent her the wrong bouquet. She would simply call them and have them send hers. She dialed their number. Ring, 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 ring. No answer, even after the third try. No one was in the shop. There was only one thing to do, make her own bouquet from the flowers growing in her backyard, and this she did. Daisies and baby's breath. Annabelle and Richard chose to marry in a quiet ceremony with only themselves, their priest, and 2 witnesses. Nevertheless, Annabelle looked ever so much the bride in white as she walked down the aisle. She had no father to give her away, so she walked alone to meet Richard at the altar. He was smiling so broad she could tell he approved of her choice of dress, and was so very proud to be marrying her that day. The ceremony was just perfect as far as Annabelle and Richard were concerned, and then the priest said, "If anyone can show just cause why this couple may not be lawfully wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." From the back of the church the heavy oak door slammed open, and a woman's voice rang out, "I have just cause." Annabelle noticed Richard stiffen as she turned to look at the woman coming up the aisle. She was so angry, glaring at Annabelle, but it was the gun in her hand that scared Annabelle the most. "Richard belongs to me," she screamed as she lifted the gun and pointed it at Annabelle. One cannot say with precise detail what happened next. It defies reality, but the sound of the gunshot reverberated around the church as Fiona fired at Annabelle. Richard fell to his knees next to Annabelle as she fell onto the altar, a gunshot wound to her forehead. His Annabelle was dead. Fiona had been carted off by the police, had stood trial and was found guilty of Annabelle's death. She had shown no remorse. Her execution date had been set for 3 months hence, but it was little consolation for Richard. As the days passed and the weeks passed as well, people started to forget the tragic circumstances that led to Annabelle's death, and the sleepy little town community continued on with their day-to-day humdrum. Annabelle had been forgotten, but not for Richard. Each day he dragged himself to the office, but never really fulfilling his day's work. Most of the time he was drifting in and out of daydreams. Then, before he realised, 3 months had passed, and it was Friday, October the 31st, the day of Fiona's execution. Everything would change for Richard that day. He had planned to go to the prison to witness Fiona's last day and last breath, and so on this day he left the office at 11 a.m. This would give him enough time to drive to the prison and still leave him 10 minutes to spare. It was the worst possible day to travel. There was a storm brewing, and a clap of thunder made him jump as he opened his car door and slid into the driver's seat. He turned the ignition key. The ignition spluttered but refused to start. Damn. That was all he needed. He would have to take the metro. There would be a train in 15 minutes to take him as far as close to the prison as he could hope for, but he wouldn't have time to spare. The station was just round behind his office building. The walk wouldn't take him long. Huddled down into the collar of his coat, Richard hurried along, only glancing briefly at the shops as he passed. But just before the corner, Richard's attention was caught by a curious sign placed on the footpath, so far out it almost tripped him up. Damn! He wasn't prone to swearing, but he was tempted at that moment to let a few choice words pass his lips, but the words on the sign stopped him midstream. Psychic, it read. Spells, potions, and fortunes told. He shuddered, and a little electric shock went through him. He went into the shop. A curiously dressed woman greeted him, and Richard didn't know why or how, but he found himself telling her about Annabelle and all his troubles. The woman just nodded her head and handed him a package. "This will be all you need," she said, and Richard left. It wasn't until he was on the train that he opened it. Inside was a note, a scroll, a piece of chalk, and a black candle. Somewhere thunder rumbled, and a flash of lightning lit up the carriage. Would this bring him back his sweet Annabelle? He put everything in his pocket and continued on his journey. Witnessing Fiona hang for killing Annabelle wasn't as satisfying as he had hoped, and he returned home with a heavy heart, and he vowed Annabelle would never be forgotten. Tonight wasn't the full moon, but Richard was so unhappy and missed Annabelle so much that he took out the package the psychic had given him and reread the note that came with the little bag, and vowed there and then that tonight he would sleep with Annabelle in his arms, no matter what the cost. The rain had stopped, but thunder and lightning still ravaged the sky as Richard made his way to the cemetery and Annabelle's grave. Her grave was still a mound of dirt, but a little cross and daisies marked her burial site. He would do everything proper for it later, but if this spell worked, he wouldn't have to. He shuddered a little, and little electric shocks went through him. He sat at the grave and followed the directions. He didn't know if it were a new moon or not, but at that moment he didn't care. He just wanted Annabelle. A resurrection spell. This is the spell that the psychic gave Richard. This spell would work better under a full moon, but as long as it's not a new moon, it'll be safe. But you may want to try and cast a protection spell beforehand in case something backfires. I'm unsure of the side effects, but if there are any, please let me know. Also, if the spell is done under a new moon, for those wondering, it'll bring back an evil spirit of the person you were trying to resurrect. You have been warned. He then unrolled the scroll, followed the directions as precisely as he could, and chanted the spell. Within moments, a cold, biting wind blew up around him. If he had been observant, he would have noticed that it was just around him and Annabelle's grave. The candle blew out. He sat back and waited. He waited for a long time, and for what he didn't fully understand, but when the rain started again in earnest, he had to make a dash for shelter. Deep under the earth in a little wooden box, Annabelle stirred. And this is the spell he chanted, and this is the instructions that he was given. Draw a regular pentagram over the grave of whom you are trying to resurrect. Once a pentagram is drawn, light the candle by the headstone of the grave and quietly chant this. For thou who sleeps in stone and clay, heed this call. Rise up and obey. Trek on through the mortal door, assemble flesh and walk once more. There should be a strong gale of wind to blow out the candle. If this happens and the candle goes out, then the spell has worked. If not, then you may want to try again another night. Trying twice on the same night may not bring back the loved one, but their spirit, and if this happens, you will either be protected by the spirit or haunted by it. The spell should bring back your loved one. maybe not in their significant form, but perhaps as something or someone else. So, how has Annabelle returned? I don't know. What do you think, guys? Richard loved her so much, and Fiona took her life. Now she's back from the grave. For good or for evil? I wonder. Hope you'll join me as I start my haunted house readings, and join me, Annabelle and Lilith, as we go through those readings with tarot. It'll be interesting. So, hoping you'll join me and see what happens. So thank you very much, everyone, and until next time, from me and Annabelle, so many blessings.